Starting the hit record.
Done.
Excellent. Oh, well, we're now at 12:02, so I think I'll kick off and allow people to join as I'm introducing the topic. Welcome, everybody. This is the first of the Trusted Research Environment Community of Practice meetings. I'm calling it cheekily Unlock. And the reason I'm calling it that is we want to use trusted research environments or secure research environments to unlock the power of the data by using TREs effectively. My name's Roger Ward. I'm a solutions architect with the ARDC, and with me is Dr. Felicity Flack from PHRN, who will also be talking. And I'm also joined by Dr. Adrian Burton and Professor Rebecca Gluert from PHRN. So welcome, everybody. I'd just like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet, and we pay our respect to their elders, past and present. Okay, just briefly, I'll show you the programme for today's meeting. Felicity and I are going to do some slides. Adrian and Rebecca are going to talk about the ARDC and the PHRN. But what we want to do is make this an interactive session, and about 12:20, 12:25, we want to throw questions open to the floor, and we want your feedback on what you're looking for from a TRE community of practice. And also feel free to ask questions about TREs and secure research environments. Okay, so what I'll do now is just hand to Rebecca, and she'll just give you an introduction to the PHRN, and then she'll hand to Adrian and he'll talk about the ARDC. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Right, over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Whilst Rebecca's getting started there, just to frame, it's the first of the meetings of the community, of the proposed community practice. It's actually an establishment meeting. We're here to reach out to a smaller group in this first level 0 meeting, if you like, to work out what the issues are around trusted research environments and how a community practice might operate to add value in the area.
Great, thanks, Adrian. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us online. I just wanted to give a very brief overview of the PHRN, or the Population Health Research Network, for those of you who aren't aware of us. As with ARDC, we are funded by NCRIS, so the National Research Infrastructure for Australia. So this is that moving forward? Yep, okay. All right, just in terms of our background, we've been running since 2009, and our mission is to lead and enable the linkage of data for world-class action-oriented research. We are a collection and network of infrastructure around Australia. So in every state and territory, we have linkage centres, as well as secure research environments that support researchers to conduct research using linked data. So we have shared over 20 billion records since 2019, and you can see some of those project milestones down there in terms of the number of projects that we have supported using linked administrative data sets. We link all types of data, health data, registries, clinical trials, cohort data, aged care, disability, justice, education, etc. And we have data from across the life course, so from pre-birth to death. So we have data from states and territories, including births, perinatal data, hospital admissions, emergency data, disease registries and deaths, as well as Commonwealth data sets, including social services data, immunisations, prescription, MBS, medical benefits, cancer and aged care. We have a number of pieces of infrastructure and services that we provide to Australian researchers, so including routine data linkage, specialised or ad hoc data linkage, national data linkage systems, intergenerational linkage and geocoding. We also have a metadata platform, a searchable publications database, an online application system to try and streamline access to linked data across Australia, price calculators so people can get a sense of how much it's going to cost them if they want to have access to linked administrative data, secure research environments, and linked national data assets. So Felicity is going to talk a bit more about the secure research environments that we have supported since 2011. And we also have project facilitation. So we've got a network of client service officers to help guide researchers through the process of accessing linked administrative data, as well as community consultations, legal, ethical and social implications counselling, and online researcher training. This is just what our metadata platform looks like if you wanted to search up linkable or linked data assets. And this is our website. The ARDC and PHRN are working together as NCRIS capabilities to improve data access and output for researchers across Australia. We're doing that in a number of ways. So firstly, ensuring that data are more findable, so metadata platforms, that data are more accessible to researchers, so the secure research environments, cloud facilities and online applications, for example. That infrastructure is designed to be interoperable and seamless, and facilitating the reproducibility of world-class infrastructure. So I think I'll hand over to you, Adrian.
Oh.
Perfect. You can see that.
Good. As Beck just pointed out, we're part of the NCRIS program. The ARDC is Australian Research Data Commons. Here are some common elements of across the world that have been identified for data commonses. And we do everything in there from services, tools, underpinning compute infrastructure, through to the things on the top, which are a bit more sort of human infrastructure, capacity, governance, engagement. And of course, we do this across the whole of the research space, from astronomy through to religious studies. We do focus, however, in 3 different areas. The people is our health, national health infrastructure, planet focused around environment, and has some Indigenous. So we have 3 nominated research data commonses that we're working at a domain level. In the people RDC, we did a lot of consultation and came up with 4 areas which we're working at the moment. And secure data access was one of the biggest areas that the sector said to us, this is, you know, a systemic issue. The kinds of activities that we've got working in this area is where I told you that we run a cloud. So we're building up the Nectar cloud to be secure and ISO certified for this kind of human research or sensitive data research. We're also people said to us a role that ARDC could play was to help convene a conversation around the consistency, quality, interoperability of trusted research environments across the sector. And also in some areas, we will be investing with our Hasanda partners, for example, around getting trusted research environments for clinical trials and other research data assets. So that's the second pillar of our work within the People Research Data Commons is all about secure data access. ARDC has seen proliferation, if you like, of secure research environments, both because of environmental, just the way research is being done with more data, more secure requirements, and also some of the policy things from New South Wales government or from the Commonwealth government around the ONDC certification of research organisations, there's been a drive to create more and more trusted research environments, which is a good thing, but can also have its problems around proliferation. So that's why we're proposing with PHRN to run a community of practice to bring the voices of the community together around what is a good trusted research environment, how can they be consistent so that researchers get a seamless experience, how can they be interoperable so that you can do research across multiple data assets that might be held across the environment. So that's why we're here at the table. ARDC and PHRN are planning to convene this community of practice, and we've invited this very first meeting, invited some of the key players along to say, how do you think it should run? And then we'll hopefully start official meetings of the community of practice later in the year. I think that's all from me.
Excellent. Thank you, Adrian. And now I'll hand to Dr. Felicity Flack at PHRN, and she'll just say some words about secure research environments. Over to you, Felicity.
Now, I hope I'm sharing the right screen. Maybe this one. Does that look right?
It's just
one more click, I believe.
There we go. Got it.
Success. Hi, nice to be here. I'm just going to talk very quickly in a little bit more depth about the PHRN's involvement in secure research environments over the many years. But first, and perhaps to encourage you to talk about this in the discussion section, is there are a range of different terms that are used for these environments, and as we're starting a community of practice, it might be a useful conversation to have about what terms do we want to use. The ARDC obviously have chosen trusted research environment. At the PHRN, we like to use secure research environment for a number of reasons. Firstly, we think that it clearly communicates that the primary feature of the environment is security, so protection of sensitive health data in our case, compliance with regulations and robust access controls, whereas TRE emphasises trust, which is quite an abstract and subjective concept. Trust is important, but it can be earned and demonstrated through security governance and operational practices. And we think that the use of the terms SRE underscores the sort of concrete mechanisms that build trust rather than just asserting that they're trustworthy. We think that SRE avoids ambiguity. TRE can be interpreted differently across different sectors, countries or institutions, because what's trusted to one organisation may not be trusted to another, whereas SRE is a bit more precise. It just describes an environment that ensures secure access. And also aligns with regulatory and legal language, data protection laws, ethics committees. Recently in New South Wales, they're using the term secure research environment. So we think it aligns. And trust is not something that you can actually legislate or measure, whereas we can measure and demonstrate security. So we think it's useful for clear communication, but absolutely open for discussion on that topic. PHRN has a very long history in the secure research environments world. When we were first established in 2009, one of the motivations and reasons for us existing was to build the capability across Australia to bring data together across the country and make it available in one place for researchers to access. Clearly in Australia, given our geographic size, a physical laboratory was not going to be an option. So even back in 2009, we were funded and it was envisaged that there would be a national, what we called a virtual data analysis laboratory at that time. It took us a few years to do all the consultation and design and build, but by 2012 we had funded and supported the development of the Secure Unified Research Environment at the Sachs Institute, and we continue to support the operation of SURE. And we did this because there are a range of advantages for both researchers and custodians in the use of SREs. For researchers, It does hopefully enable access to rich and, in our case, linked data. Faster approvals, I'm sure some people might question that, but maybe there's some data that undoubtedly Australian researchers would not have access to if it wasn't for secure research environments. And they also have built-in tools and they're scalable infrastructure, so we can continue to increase the size of them, the more people who need to use them. For data custodians, it gives them control and compliance assurance, transparency, reduced risk, and confidence in the outputs. And in essence, we see secure research environments as moving from a situation where we did just trust researchers with encrypted CDs to a situation where we don't have to rely on trust. We can be absolutely certain that the security settings are X or Y or whatever is required for that particular project. Now within the PHRN, Beck showed you earlier that we've got data linkage units in every jurisdiction in the country. Most of them now either use or operate an SRE. So we still have the Shaw, Sachs Institute, the Victorian Department of Health has the Vault, the HW is currently using the ABS's Seed, WA Health building their health data platform, Queensland are in the midst of building a secure access environment as well, and all our other units will use Shaw when they need to. And over the years, we've also done some work with Erica, and there are a range of instances of Erica around the country as well. And also our friends at Swansea University who've built the SERP environment, and there's a couple of instances of SERP in the country as well. So to finish off, secure research environments are not new in Australia. We've been pioneering and operating them for over 15 years. And we've enabled researchers to access data from every jurisdiction securely and efficiently and with custodian confidence. So I might leave it there.
Thanks, Felicity. I'll just share my screen.
Over to you.
Okay. Is that sharing okay? Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Excellent. So yeah, there's a bit of a difference in terminology. Trusted research environments. Our definition of a TRE is a secure and controlled environment designed to facilitate the analysis of sensitive and confidential data. But we see the terms TRE and SRE as interchangeable. Now, one point I really want to emphasize here, effective TREs require strong alignment between technology, but more importantly, the governance. It's how the TRE is governed that's the important aspect of it, I think. Of course, the technology is important, but the hard thing is the governance. And that's the thing we've got to get right. And once we've got the governance in place, everything else will flow. That's my opinion on TREs. We're seeing a growing demand for TREs. We were overwhelmed by the number of people who wanted to come to this first community of practice. We were really surprised. So there's a strong demand, there's a strong interest in this area. And it's being driven by certain things. New South Wales Health is now mandating their use of secure research environments, or TREs, for research data access. So if you want to work with health data, you've got to do it on a TRE or an SRE. And also, with the advent of AI, there's possible integration of offline large language models that can be used in TREs. So this is also driving interest in TREs and SREs. And of course, legislation. So the Office of the National Data Commissioner, the ONDC, has the new Data Availability and Transparency Act. It's not that new, it was in 2022. And this provides accreditation for organisations and service providers handling sensitive government data. So the ONDC's push for safe, reusable government data increases the demand for TREs. So we're seeing increasing demand for TREs. We held a series of workshops last year because we did a framework on TREs last year. And I just picked up some of the quotes from some of the workshops we had last year. And the number one quote and the number one feedback we have from researchers is the cost. People say the cost of TREs and SREs is prohibitive. So when we talk about them, they say, yes, but how much is it going to cost? And further to that, people are worried about long-term storage costs, concerned about future costs and long-term storage and the ethical implications of that. This is a direct quote from a very senior professor in the area, and she wanted affordable access to national infrastructure. Number 4, people see linking between TREs as important. They're worried that TREs and SREs are just exacerbating existing problems with data silos. So they're interested in how the data can be linked between TREs. And number 5, this is a direct quote. They want to be involved as researchers in data governance. They want a say. They want to prevent this, this them and us mentality. So I thought these quotes were quite interesting. So this is the kind of thing we're looking for from this community of practice. We want to know what people in the community are thinking about TREs and SREs. Now, Felicity's touched on this already, but I'll just briefly talk about this. There's lots of TRE solutions out there. There's public, there's university and government. That building up there, that's horrible lovely 1960s building is University of New South Wales, and they've got the Erica TRE. Then we've got the Australian Bureau of Statistics. They've got SEED, which is a national TRE that's available currently to federal and state governments. And then, of course, there's the SACS that runs Shaw, as Felicity talked about. But there are increasingly commercial providers out there who, for a fee, will provide a TRE service as well. So I won't talk too much about Shaw, as Felicity's already covered this. But just to highlight that it's ISO 27001 accredited, which is the international security standard, and it's got a range of software tools for researchers. I'd like to talk about key points. This is an emerging TRE from the Queensland Cyber Infrastructure Foundation. And Key Point is a new player in the market, but it's quite an exciting player. The Key Point is a trusted research environment designed for sharing and accessing and analysing sensitive data. The platform employs self-contained vaults, and importantly, it plays nicely with national infrastructure. So it uses the Australian Access Federation for authentication, and it also uses OpenStack for virtualization, which is of course what Nectar, the ARDC's national infrastructure platform, is based on. So it can be used with Nectar. And just briefly, SEED. SEED is the ABS's offering. And I just wanted to highlight this one because it uses cloud. It's on Microsoft Azure Cloud, but it's highly secure. It's got protected level status, and that's a big deal in government. It's got IRAP certification, which is the Australian government security certification, and it's also ISO 27001 certified. Okay, what I'm going to do now is ask people to pose questions. So if you can hit the chat and put some questions in, and we're also happy for people to raise their hand and ask questions. But I'm going to start the ball rolling by just throwing a couple of questions to Beck and Adrian. So I'll just go to my notes here. Yeah, so Adrian and Beck, I'm wondering how the ARDC and PHRN can work together to further the national conversation around secure research, trusted research environments and secure research environments. Maybe Beck, could I ask you first what your opinion on this is?
Yes, yeah, sure. The way I see it, as PHRN have obviously been supporting SREs for quite some time, and ARDC possibly soon as well. I think it's really important that we have interoperable systems. One of the things that we are hearing from researchers is that they're sick of having all these different accreditations and systems that they have to go through and processes. So ensuring that we can make that as streamlined as possible, and also that we are on the same page in terms of our strategy moving forward. We've talked a little bit about how there's a lot of new SREs popping up here, there and everywhere, and it's probably not necessary because we can scale the ones that we already have. So rather than spending significant amounts of money and resourcing into creating hundreds of new SREs across the country, which creates issues for interoperability and siloing, I think we need to really encourage a more connected ecosystem.
From the ARDC point of view, very much the same, and that's why we've got together to try and launch this community of practice. But there's other things we're doing around the community of practice, around policy advocacy and support materials, etc. But I think I would probably start with what is good practice. I was hoping that we might be able to, if there are going to be lots of TREs and secure environments, we may not be able to control the sort of market forces that are pushing that. We may, but as well as doing that, I think it'd be good for us to get together and describe what is good. What is a good TRE? What are we looking for? What are the what does the community believe is good practice? I think that will help those that are on the journey of implementation where they need it. What it will also help into the future is if we know what good is, then you can design sort of mutual recognition, and some of these interoperability, consistency questions can only be answered if we have a common set of ideas, a common agreement of what is good. And so they're potentially just taking out of my hat that Wollongong University might be able to just say, oh, well, no, that is a good TRE over at Monash. We're happy for the data to be used there, or vice versa. But there's a lot, I think there's conversations and materials and maybe some joint work with a group like this to be able to get to that point.
And just a follow-up question. So many institutions are grappling with build versus buy decisions. How are we going to encourage them to stop reinventing the wheel and share TREs rather than just building TREs or going out and buying new TREs? What are your thoughts on that, Rebecca? How can we guide them?
Well, I think a lot of people probably don't know what TREs or SREs exist currently. So there's probably a place for us to be advertising in some ways, I suppose, what currently exists. And I think that this group, this community of practice will probably be really useful in helping us do that, but also determining what the specific needs are of organisations, because they are different across government, research, institutions, and ensuring that we can meet the needs of those users.
I talked about before us not being able to control some of those market forces that are sort of pushing the proliferation. But I think we can just help it to happen more sensibly, have reusable parts where maybe the tools from one TRE can work on the data from another. I think if we can help it to happen more sensibly, then universities, organizations generally make rational decisions. They don't always. Sometimes they make an irrational decision because they just don't know enough. And so I think we can help in that, to say, look, this is what a good one is. Here are the ones that are available. If we can be clarifying those issues, then I think that can be a contribution. And then where we do have those, making the ones we have work more effectively together is definitely something we can contribute.
Thanks, Adrian, and thanks, Beck. Now I'm going to hand to my colleague, Jude, who will read out some of the questions from that have been posed from the chat. So over to you, Jude.
Thanks.
And just before we start, I'm keen for this. These questions are not for Beck and I. They're questions for the group. How much time? We've got half an hour sort of left of this meeting. I'd like to be able to allocate some time to, what are the big issues, like some of these questions that we're talking about. And so let's have this as a group discussion. And then to move on towards the back of it to say, well, okay, what would a community of practice do for some of these things? How would we come together to form such a group?
So yes, on that, if you want to ask a question, Pete, feel free to put your hand up in the chat. But Jude will start with the ones that have come through already.
So I'm going to start with you, Bernie, because you have several questions in the chat. Do you want to pick your most burning question?
Right. Thanks, Jude. I'll go with one that's quite common across others, since I think lots of people would like to know what work and what resources we have in requirements analysis and comparison across the plethora of systems are out there. Like you can imagine a matrix which has features on the horizontal and examples on the vertical, or whichever way you want to do it. And how do we avoid reinventing the wheel here and creating even more partial solutions? And maybe, as you've said, there isn't one solution that fits all, but there must be common pieces of things that are needed and reusable. So maybe a pitch for this group is, if that such a thing doesn't exist, maybe one thing we could do is build that together. And some of us have lots of knowledge in this space and others are just starting on the journey, but it would be very helpful to have a resource that looks through all the requirements and all of the options that are available. And not saying one's better than the other necessarily, no value judgment, just that's really the heart of a couple of my thoughts. So yeah.
Felicity, did you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, I think, Bernie, potentially that is some work that the community of practice could do, but I think there's some things that it could build on. So we did some work, well, just a royal we, a few years ago, that did pull together sort of for want of a better word, a framework or the things that an organisation might want to consider when assessing different SREs for their own purposes. Because you're absolutely right, different organisations will have different needs and requirements. So I think relatively quickly we could get that sort of a tool together that might help people do. Ultimately, you as an organisation are going to need to do the comparison yourself and make the decision yourself about what's best for you, but maybe we can develop some tools that would help with that. The other thing worth thinking about is, of the existing TREs, they do operate in, I think there's about 3 different models. So there's the Shore model, which is sort of a fee-for-service model. Shore will provide secure access for any organisation who wishes to use them. They're not closed door in any sense. Then you've got the government-run ones, which are really there if you're using, for example, Vault, if you're using Victorian data. Yes, you can bring in your clinical trial data that you're linking to Victorian data, but you can't use the Vault for just any other research project that you might be doing that's no relation to the government data. So there's those sort of institutional style ones. And then you've got Erica and SERP, where you can have an instance of Erica or SERP in your own organisation. So it's sort of a midway point. So there's different models in what you might consider for your organisation work best with you. And then, of course, there's the build from scratch. You can do it yourself if you want.
And on that, I can see Stephen, I don't know whether you want to comment on the minimum set of requirements that came from the previous community of practice.
Yeah, so we, as part of the SERP project, there were 3 communities of practice that were established as part of that. The infrastructure one, as we kind of decided not to deploy SERP and build Keypoint, we also then started to build out a list of capabilities or features that are as a minimum set of requirements for a TRE to exhibit or have, for it to be considered useful for Australian research. I can try and dig that out and share that with the group. It was a fairly long list. But
Yeah, no,
I think it's a good starting point
Yeah,
in terms of
definitely is.
having a baseline measure of capabilities that need to exist.
And I'm sure that the organisations that have been adopting over the last couple of years must have had their internal spreadsheet themselves around what they're doing. Now, they may not want to share that, but we could pull some of that out into some joint resourcing.
Yep.
Stephen, while we've got you off mute, you've posed a question in the chat about making SREs, TREs known and endorsed by grant funding bodies. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Sure. So if you go to NHMRC or ARC and you're looking to do research on sensitive data, you often end up having to describe how you're going to manage that data, how you're going to keep it secure as part of that kind of application. It would be wonderful if, for the landscape of TREs that are endorsed for research in Australia, that those grant funding bodies understand that these environments and systems exist, such that you can just say, this data will be housed and managed in Shore, or housed and managed in Erica, or housed and managed in Keypoint. The funding bodies know what they are. They know that they're safe and secure, and they don't need to ask any more questions. And you've built an ecosystem that goes from end to end from the grant funding body all the way through to the production of output, that without having to sort of continually describe what security mechanisms you're putting in place, what controls and governance you're going to have, because it's being managed in endorsed environments that everyone understands.
I think that's a really good point, and I mean that's only something that we can facilitate.
Sorry, I missed the comment.
I think it's a really good point, and I think it's something that we can try to facilitate in terms of educating the funding bodies around what are already certified SREs that exist.
Just to add to that, I think also educating the data custodians around the various TREs that are available as well. I'm Tim, by the way, from Sydney Uni. I've come across some local health districts, for example, in Sydney, that have never heard of half of the TREs, or more than half of the TREs that are available. So, we're in the process of trying to stand up some capacity in this space, and having to also go through the same processes with the data custodians just adds time to research, and it's not particularly helpful.
Yeah.
Bernie, you had your hand up, I see.
Yep. Don't want to dominate the questions, but another area. So Australian Biocommons, and with partners, some of whom are on the call here, we're running a program called Guardians, which is NCRIS funded. We're building national infrastructure for humanomics data sharing analysis. We have lots of demand for trusted environments for analytics. But when we look across the board of the ones that exist, most of them, and I apologize if I'm unaware of some things, but most of them do not seem to be scalable for the kind of size and complexity of data and computation that we want to do in omics. And typically we want to do distributed computation, those sorts of things as well. Many of them sort of provide a virtual environment for a single machine, which is okay for some analysis, but not really suited for what we want to do. So I just want to flag that desire that we have. We don't want to reinvent the wheel or create new things where we don't have to. And we absolutely want to create reusable infrastructure in Australia, so we're not constantly creating new and more complicated things. And I agree that we would like to, funding agencies to be directing researchers to using these resources as well. But at the moment, the quandary we really have is what to do about large-scale computation in these environments.
Felicity?
Just to answer Bernie's question, yeah, you're absolutely right. And in NCRIS, we are aware of this need. We've done a bit of pilot work with Shore around some omics projects, but it's certainly on our to-do list, as in how do we make these secure environments interoperable with higher level compute.
I'm going to combine this. There are lots of questions in the chat, so I'm going to try and combine some of them. So has anyone done any group done an evaluation of the various SREs and TREs that are out there? and what requirements differentiate them. And I'm also going to look at that from a question from a researcher perspective of how do we make the so giving us information on what's out there, but then also how do we make them more usable for researchers? Who'd like to take that?
I'll go again. What do you mean by more usable, Bernie?
Well, if I put my researcher hat on, because I also use these environments from time to time, and they generally have lots of barriers to, I'm talking in the omics space as well. We have complicated requirements on analytics. Usually they restrict things you can install and run and so on, and life is just painful generally to use the systems. Most people use them because the data is there and there's no other way for them to use it. But yeah, that having some flexibility on the usability from the user's point of view would really improve the uptake and the acceptance of these. There's a lot of pushback we get from researchers. They want to download the data to their local institutional HPC environment and do their custom analytics there. And I can really understand why people want to do that, because we don't want to slow down their research. So from my point of view, there is a reputation amongst users that these systems can be very difficult to use, especially for complex and custom analytics.
Can I just make a comment on that? Yeah, Bernie, that's exactly what we've experienced as well in the environments of researchers, if I'm putting my research hat on. The inability to upload certain software, even things as simple as not being able to copy your scripts and paste it into the environment. So things like that make things really hard. I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, Felicity, you'll probably have information here, but I'm pretty sure that Shaw is very flexible and agile in that, so that you can do those things. But Felicity probably has more knowledge on that.
I'm not going to comment on specific things, but Shaw have tried to be focused on the user experience. And I think as we move into the large scale analytics like the omics world, then ideally, yeah, there would be a lot of work around usability and the user experience. I think that's important. Yeah.
Kim, did you want to add something to that?
Sure, thank you. Sorry, I was late. I didn't have the right link, clearly. I was just going to add that, yeah, look, the experience in TREs and STEs is extremely variable between different providers. My disclosure is I'm working for a secure data environment provider for a commercial service these days, and we don't have any restrictions on the kind of things you're talking about, Bernie, where you can bring your own platforms in, just to mention that. But the landscape between research and academic and university led environments versus commercial offerings is quite variable, and it's certainly, the researcher requirement for installing your own software, bringing your own data references in, being able to run the type of compute that meets your requirements, being able to run AI within the platform without it using external services and all that sort of stuff, I think is really important, and something that, I guess should be captured and shared with what platforms out there will meet particular users' needs around that.
I've just noticed that Matt Gorringe has arrived. I just wondered whether
Yes.
Matt had any comments on. Did you hear that question, Matt?
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute myself. Thanks, Felicity. Yes, I don't know there's much point talking specifically about Shaw. I mean, we hear the same requests, particularly about some of the security aspects do limit, I guess, the flexibility or usability of the system. Clearly, I think we've got GPUs available. We've got, a pilot high performance compute available. People are using AI, and in the Shaw environment, people can bring their own software. But something as simple as what you said, Beck, not being able to generate, as many people are now, generate code in your large language model outside the environment and then easily bring it in, that's a big deal. And we're hearing lots of researchers talking about simple things like that at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. I wonder if I could I'll just read another question out. I think this one's for you, Rebecca. The PHRN is instrumental in linking and providing access to national and jurisdictional data sets. From your experience, what are the most significant policy or governance barriers, rather than technical ones, that we need to address collectively to ensure that TREs can truly unlock the value of linked health data for researchers?
I think the governance issues are significant. Dealing with a federated country, we're having state government policies, legislation, as well as Commonwealth, can make the environment extremely complex. Where we see particular custodians requiring their data to be held in particular SREs or environments, and not being able to be shared beyond that. And this is where I think the technical as well as the governance issues need to be sorted out. And I think ARDC and PHRN have a role to play here around trying to make these ecosystems, facilitative to sharing data across states and territories and the Commonwealth. Felicity might have something else to add there.
No.
No?
Matt, were you warming up there? No. Just back on the we've gone through the non-technical and technical. ARDC is doing some work with around the architecture of starting from the Nectar cloud. It doesn't have to be Nectar cloud, but just looking at the architectures and almost the spectrum of environments where you have a secure cloud and somebody comes and has their own small application. They want it to be secure. Like we quite often get projects that just arrive on Nectar. They want to do 3 months worth of work. They bring their own applications. In one sense, it's a research environment. How secure is it? Well, who knows? That's the users are building and bringing that. So we're starting to think about architectures within the Nectar cloud that would build on the secure machines and the secure cloud, bringing up services that would allow you to then bring in tools, bring in data sets, so that then we have more of a spectrum of research environments, so virtual research environments, and then some custom secure research environments, and then a secure research environment. So we're thinking about it more in a spectrum of applications, and what is the architecture behind that would allow some of that flexibility that were people talking about, to say, look, I've got an environment, I really need to run this machine learning algorithm, so I need this kind of GPU. So it's almost being able to create your custom secure environment using some of the components of the Nectar cloud. So it's definitely something that we're thinking about, and there's no reason why some of those components couldn't support the existing secure environments like Shore and QSIF as well.
Yeah, I'm just imagining almost some kind of a thing on the website where you could say these are the requirements that I need, and then it will spit out the SREs that would facilitate that. I'm keen to hear from people online about their experience with output vetting. I know we've had quite a bit of commentary around the time taken for researchers to get the outputs out, because there's different requirements. Sometimes custodians have to check everything, and whether there are things that we can do to make sure that happens in a more effective and efficient way. Have people had experiences or issues with that? I don't know.
I was at a meeting in Europe about a month ago, and SREs, TREs, a big topic of interest there as well. And everybody has that exact bottleneck, which is how do we do output vetting? Just because it's a human eyeballs situation at the moment, and people are talking about all sorts of AI solutions, but I think that's a bottleneck for those people as well.
Dom?
Hi, Ron. Just to mention that Key Point has a data governance model which is a bit different, where the output vetting is done by the research team itself. So within Key Point, you have a project with a vault, and the data governance is done by the research team. So it's really up to them to provide that speed and review process. We are not relying on someone to do that for the project.
That's an interesting model, Dom. Seed do something similar with the ABS. That's an interesting model. Thank you for that.
Just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you if you could put your comments and remaining questions in the chat. I am collating them into a document which will go out with the recording of this, and I'm going to hand back to our MC. I'm trying to find you on my screen, Roger.
Yeah,
there you are.
I'm
going to hand back to Roger.
Thanks for that lively discussion, and it's really important that we hear from the community. And I'm really glad to see we've got vendors here as well. Kim from Adrian. It's great to see the vendors here because I think they're part of the solution as well. You know, we've heard that a number of TREs are using Azure and AWS, so I think vendors really are part of the solution. And they have a slightly different perspective sometimes to ones that have been built by an institution. So it's great to see so many different parties represented at this meeting. What I'd like to do now is just hand back to Adrian and Rebecca for final thoughts on, you know, what we do in the future with this community of practice and what people see as the priorities for moving forward, and how do we take this debate, how do we take the community of practice forward and get value from it? Maybe I could hand to you in the first instance, Adrian.
Sure, and I'd like, if possible, to get some quick input, at least through the chat from the attendees on how you thought this might work. So now the question is, how could this work? I think we were testing the waters. We knew that this was a big topic. We've invited a few people just to get it started. To cut to the chase, a lightweight community of practice, you know, could meet quarterly, for example, have some presentations where the function we're talking about by having a presentation from different TRE groups or research groups, that's the function of information sharing. And I think, you know, that I'm hoping that you would see that as valuable, but I'm happy to hear your thoughts on the chat there as to how we do that information sharing component of the work. But just to, you know, a simplistic example would be, you know, we set up a schedule of presentations where we're getting examples of good practice and current practice from different organizations on a regular basis. Second thing I heard everyone saying was not just sharing information, but creating some, you know, consensus, you know, the good practice, the spreadsheet that just looks at different options, some documents around good practice. So that's more than just sharing information, and that would be more than a lightweight community of practice. That would be identifying joint opportunities for work and doing some of that work ourselves. If it's a lightweight community of practice, that means it's the community sort of shaving off a bit of time. We can also complement that with other project work. But anyway, that second category, the first category was just sharing information. The second one is identifying joint activity and then actually resourcing it together. And the third one I heard was more of a kind of an advocacy back to the government and back to the funders and back to, you know, the research system around, you know, what we think good is. So anyway, they're the three functions. I'd like to hear your ideas about how they might work. We would also need to, my thoughts is that we would also call for co-chairs and people who wanted to actually help run the group as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think you've summarised it very well. I think that there are some things, you know, like the matrix that we can undertake to work together. It sounds like from what I've seen on the chat and what people have said, some of that work has already been done in little bits and pieces. It would be useful if what has been done, if you're happy to share it, for it to be shared with us, so that we're not starting from scratch. But we can, this is something that we could do together. I think the education piece is really important. around, funders and HRECs and things like that. And then also talking about the possibilities, we're talking about the output vetting. Kim's put a note in there about something that they've been using or created. So looking at some of the solutions to the problems that people are facing would also be really great.
And I see Matt has put something in the chat around a key stakeholder group, the custodians, for example. So that might be something that we would send back to at least the people who have attended this first meeting, some ideas on the scope and the key groups who we think should attend, and then working on communications with those groups so that they can attend. But I agree, Matt, the custodians are an absolute key stakeholder and we should reach out to those. But I'd like, as a general proposition to what you're talking about, Matt, for us to, if the people who've attended today could help us to think about what are the key groups that we need to have involved and how you might get them involved, that would be helpful.
Excellent. Now I'm just conscious of time. We're at 12:58, so I really like to run a tight ship and get everyone out on time. So yes, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending the first Community of Practice meeting. We plan to maybe have one more this year in November, and then our plan is to have them quarterly, but we're welcome for feedback. If people think we need them more often, we're quite happy to take that feedback as well. But that was our initial plan, to run these quarterly. And we'll collate all the questions and feedback we've had today. Jude will put those into a document, and we've been recording this session and we'll make it available on the ARDC website. So thank you everybody for attending today. I think it's been a really informative meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for organising it.
Thank you.
Cheers.